In the mid-1990s, Kodak was an unstoppable titan, owning nearly 90% of the American film market.
The household name, synonymous with memories, birthdays, and the very concept of capturing time itself.
But hidden deep inside their research labs was a secret invention that would eventually destroy the company entirely.
This is the story of how a $30 billion empire chose to ignore the future until it was too late. To understand the fall, we have to go back to the man who started it all, George Eastman. In 1888, Eastman revolutionized photography by making it accessible to the average person, not just professionals. His slogan was simple: "You press the button, we do the rest." It was a stroke of genius. Kodak didn't just sell cameras. They sold the film, the chemicals, and the paper needed to print them. This razor and blade business model made Kodak one of the most profitable companies in American history. By the 1970s, Kodak was the undisputed king, enjoying profit margins that other industries could only dream of. Then, in 1975, a young engineer named Steve Sasson created something revolutionary in a Kodak basement. It was the world's first digital camera, a toaster-sized device that recorded grainy black and white images on a cassette tape. Sasson excitedly showed his invention to the senior executives, expecting praise for this technological breakthrough. Instead, the executives were horrified. They saw digital photography as a direct threat to their film empire. One executive famously told Sasson, "That's cute, but don't tell anyone about it." Kodak was making so much money from film that they couldn't imagine a world without it. They feared that if they promoted digital, they would cannibalize their own highly profitable chemical business. So they buried the technology, hoping it would remain a curiosity rather than a standard. While Kodak slept, other companies were beginning to see the potential of the silicon chip. Across the ocean, Japanese competitors like Sony and Canon were quietly investing in digital sensors. By the 1980s, the first electronic cameras began hitting the market, and the digital tide started to rise. Kodak's leadership remained arrogant, believing people would always want the tangible feel of a physical photograph. They ignored a crucial marketing report that predicted digital would surpass film by the early 2000s. The company was trapped in a culture of film that punished anyone who suggested a change in direction. Meanwhile, Fujifilm, Kodak's primary rival, began diversifying into cosmetics and pharmaceuticals to survive the transition. But Kodak doubled down on what they knew best, spending billions to make film more efficient. They launched the Advantix system in 1996, a hybrid of digital and film that satisfied no one. It was too expensive, too complicated, and it still required consumers to go to a store for prints. The world was moving toward instant gratification, but Kodak was stuck in a world of 24-hour processing. In the late 90s, the arrival of the internet changed the game forever. Suddenly, people didn't need to print photos to share them. They could just upload them to the web. Kodak's core business, the printing of paper photos, began to evaporate almost overnight. Even when Kodak finally embraced digital, they made a fatal strategic error. They tried to use digital cameras to drive people back to their printing kiosks. They were selling the hardware at a loss, hoping to make up the difference in prints, but the prints never came. By 2001, Kodak was losing $60 on every digital camera they sold. The stock price, which once sat at $94, began a long and painful descent. Who needed a dedicated Kodak camera when they had a better one in their pocket? Kodak's revenue from film dropped by nearly 20% every year for a decade. They tried to pivot to printers, but the market was already dominated by giants like HP and Epson. By 2011, the company was burning through its cash reserves at an alarming rate. They began selling off their most valuable assets, their massive library of digital patents. The very patents that covered the technology they had invented and then ignored were sold to competitors. On January 19, 2012, the unthinkable happened. Eastman Kodak filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was a shocking end for a company that had been part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average for 74 years. Thousands of workers in Rochester, New York lost their jobs and their pensions. The city that Kodak built was suddenly left in the shadow of its former self. But what exactly went wrong? It wasn't just a lack of technology, it was a lack of vision. Kodak suffered from what business experts call the innovator's dilemma. They were so successful at their old business that they couldn't risk it to build a new one. They focused on the Kodak moment as a physical print, while the world moved to the Instagram moment as a shared image. Ironically, Kodak had even developed a photo-sharing site called oPhoto in 2001. But they used it to try and get people to print more photos, instead of turning it into a social network. They missed the chance to become the Facebook or Instagram of the early 2000s. Today, Kodak still exists, but it is a shadow of its former self, focusing on commercial printing and chemicals. They emerged from bankruptcy in 2013 as a much smaller, leaner company. They even made headlines in 2020 by trying to pivot into pharmaceutical manufacturing during the pandemic. But the lesson of Kodak remains one of the most important stories in business school history. It serves as a reminder that no company, no matter how big, is safe from the march of progress. If you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will do it for you. The Kodak moment used to mean a memory captured forever. Now it means a warning for every CEO. Innovation requires the courage to walk away from what made you successful in the first place. Kodak had the future in its hands back in 1975, and they simply let it slip through their fingers. As digital technology continues to evolve into AI and beyond, we see the same patterns repeating today. The question is, which of today's giants will be the next Kodak? History shows that success is a terrible teacher, making companies comfortable and blind to change. Kodak's fall was not inevitable. It was a choice to value the past over the potential of the future. Thank you for watching this StarBrief documentary. The world of business moves fast. Don't get left behind. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more insights into the power and money that shape our world.